And the third thing we have to see from the Bible about stewardship is that God provides.
I treća stvar koju moramo vidjeti iz Biblije vezano za upraviteljstvo jeste da se Bog brine.
In Psalm 145 it says,
U Psalmu 145 kaže, maybe it's easier if you read.
The eyes of all look to you, and you give them their food in due season.
Sve oči su uprte u tebe i ti im daješ hranu u
You
pravo
open your
vreme.
hand,
Ti otvaraš svoju ruku
you satisfy the desire of every living thing.
i zadovoljavaš želje svih živih bića.
You know, in contrast to any other religion,
Naspram bilo kojoj drugoj religiji,
in most religions, human beings are expected to do something in order to gain the favor of the god or gods.
u većini religija očekuje se od ljudskih bića da oni nešto preduzmu ili urade da bi stekli naklonost svojih bogova.
But according to the Bible, it's always God's initiative.
Ali iz Biblije čitamo da je uvek Bog taj koji preuzima inicijativu.
And a funny thing, I don't know if you've thought about it,
I jedna interesantna stvar, ne znam da li ste razmišljali o
but
tome,
in Genesis,
ali u postanku,
you know, it's not like Adam is there in the garden and he says, I'm really lonely.
situacija nije bila takva da se Adam našao u Edenskom vrtu i razmišljao, baš sam usamljen.
I wish there was a woman.
Voleo bih da imam neku ženu.
You know, the Genesis doesn't give us so many details, but I can almost imagine Adam playing there with the animals, totally ignorant about how it could be different.
Naravno, postanak nam ne daje mnogo detalja, ali mogu da zamislim Adama kako jednostavno se igra sa svim onim životinjama i uopšte ne razmišlja da može biti drugačije.
Oftentimes we men are surprised by women.
Često nas muškarce iznenade žene.
Wow, life could be better.
Život može da bude bolji.
And it's God who says, you know, this guy is not doing well alone. I'm going to think up something.
I Bog je bio taj koji je rekao, ovom čoveku nije dobro da bude sam, ja ću nešto da smislim.
Of course, all throughout the story of the Bible, it's always God's initiative. God is the one who thinks up, even before we know what we need. He knows what we need, and he comes up with the solution.
Ali kroz čitavu Bibliju vidimo da je Bog taj koji preuzima inicijativu i čak pre nego što mi postanemo svesni šta nam je potrebno, on već zna šta je to što nam treba i
In
daje.
the Sermon on the Mount, the Gospel of Matthew, chapters 5 to 7,
U besedi na gori Matejevo evanđelje od 5 do 7,
Jesus is saying, don't worry about what you will eat or drink or what clothes you wear.
Isus govori, nemojte brinuti šta ćete obući, šta ćete jesti, šta ćete piti, šta ćete
Look at
obući.
the flowers in the field.
Pogledajte ovo cveće u
Look at the
polju.
birds in the air.
Pogledajte ptice u
If
nebu.
your Father in heaven is taking care for those creatures that can't do anything for themselves,
Ako se vaš nebeski Otac brine za sva ta bića koja ne mogu o sebi da se brinu,
how much more is he going to provide for you?
koliko će više da se brine za vas?
Because we know, you know, human beings are the crown of creation.
Jer znamo da su ljudska bića stvorena kao
We're not just
vrhunac stvaranja.
creatures.
I mi nismo samo bića,
We're stewards.
mi smo upravitelji.
God actually allowed us, and that's the story in Genesis, the first few chapters.
Bog nam je dopustio, i to je priča u postanku prvih 3 poglavlja.
God gave us the roles of being his managers over this earth.
Bog nam je dao tu ulogu da upravljamo nad ovom zemljom.
So if that's how important we are,
Pa ako smo mi toliko važni,
how much more is he going to take care of all of our needs?
koliko će onda mnogo više da se brine za naše potrebe.
So the practical application of that is, don't worry,
I zato praktična
Be happy.
primjena ovoga jeste nemoj da brineš, budi srećan.
because God knows your needs before even you know them.
Jer Bog zna koje su tvoje potrebe pre nego što i ti sam shvatiš.
And you know, sometimes we get frustrated because we don't get an answer to a prayer.
I ponekad se uznemirimo zato što nismo dobili odgovor na molitvu.
And the fact is, you've probably all experienced that. In many cases, the reason God didn't give us this specific answer is because he had something much better in mind.
Ali verovatno ste svi to doživjeli da verovatno razlog zašto nam Bog nije dao baš taj odgovor koji smo mi očekivali jeste zato što ima nešto drugačije na umu.
You know, oftentimes, I don't know if you have his books, you probably do in Serbian, the famous Christian writer C.S. Lewis.
Verovatno imate na srpskom jeziku čuveni hrišćanski pisac C.S. Lewis.
He writes, oftentimes we human beings are like a child that's playing with mud pies in the sand.
On piše, često mi kao ljudi smo poput dece koje se igraju sa peskom i prave kule od blata.
And the father is saying, I've prepared a much better place for you. Come and see.
A otac kaže, ja sam pripremio mnogo bolje mesto za tebe.
And the
Dođi
child
da
is,
vidiš.
no, I want to be here.
A dete kaže, ne, hoću ovde da ostanem u pesmi.
Oftentimes we're like that.
I mi smo često takvi.
We can't imagine anything better than what we see right now.
Ne možemo ni da zamislimo da postoji nešto bolje od onoga što vidimo
So
sada.
we're saying, God, give me this, please.
I kažemo, Bože, daj mi ovo, molim te.
And in fact, in many cases, it's actually God's grace that doesn't give us that.
I u mnogim slučajevima, u stvari, samo zbog Božje milosti, Bog nam ne da to što tražimo.
Oftentimes this applies to ministry as well.
I često to možemo da primenimo i na službu.
Pastors often think, oh, I would like to have a big church like this other guy.
Pastori pomisle, ja bih želeo da imam veliku crkvu kao onaj tamo.
I would like to be the pastor of Willow Creek Church, have 20,000 people in my church.
Voleo bih da budem pastor crkve u Willow Creeku, tamo da ih ima 20.000.
Why does God not give me this church
Zašto mi Bog nije dao tu
here in
crkvu?
Serbia or in Bulgaria?
Ovde u Srbiji ili u Bugarskoj.
I'm just as good as Bill Hybels is.
Pa i ja sam isto tako dobar kao i Bill Hybels.
Actually, I'm probably better than he is.
Verovatno sam čak i bolji od njega.
Why does God not give it to me?
Zašto Bog nije meni to dao?
And why is not my organization as big as this other organization?
Ili zašto moja organizacija nije isto tako velika kao njegova?
Why is my business not as successful as this other business?
Zašto moj biznis nije toliko uspešan kao njihov?
Why don't I make as much money as my friend does?
Zašto ja ne mogu da zarađujem toliko novca kao moj prijatelj?
But have you thought that in many cases it's actually God's blessing that is withholding that?
Ali da li ste pomislili da je u stvari Božji blagoslov što vam ne daje to?
Because sometimes if he did give it to us, we wouldn't be able to manage it.
Jer ponekad ako bi nam on to dao, mi ne bismo mogli time da
We
upravljamo.
think we could.
Mi mislimo da bismo mogli.
It's like we don't have time to do that now, but in our in-depth course, I often ask people to imagine this situation.
Nemamo vremena sada, ali na dubljim kursevima često tražimo od ljudi da zamisle ovu situaciju.
You have an 11-year-old son
Imaš 11-godišnjeg sina
who wants to borrow your car and go around the area with it.
koji želi da pozajmi od tebe auto i da ide da se vozi ka po
And I ask people, get into the shoes of the son and think, how would you feel if your father tells no?
I tražimo od njih da se stave na njegovo mesto i da kažu, pa kako biste se vi osjećali da vam otac kaže ne?
And then we ask them, now, change the perspective. Look from the perspective of the father.
A onda im kažem sada, promenite mesta i zamislite da ste vi taj otac.
And the son is thinking, you're not fair. I can drive. My friend is driving.
Pa to nije fair, ja umem da vozim, svi moji prijatelji
It's not
voze.
a difficult thing.
Pa to i nije ništa teško.
I can do it.
Mogu ja to.
You don't trust me.
Ti mi ne veruješ.
You don't love me
Ne
enough.
voliš me
And all
dovoljno.
of that.
I sve to.
And then the perspective of the father is, I know it's dangerous for you.
A onda sa očeve tačke gledišta, pa ja znam koliko je to opasno.
I know that it may look easy, but you're still not mature enough to do it.
Znam da možda deluje tako jednostavno voziti auto, ali još nisi sazreo za to.
And even if you're good enough in drive, if someone hits you, that will ruin your life. You can get into an accident that makes a complete mess of your life.
A čak i da umeš da voziš, šta ako tebe neko udari, onda do kraja života ti napravi haos.
The father has a better perspective than the son has.
Otac ima bolju perspektivu, bolji uvid nego sin.
And that's a little bit like the difference between God's perspective and ours.
I to je slično toj perspektivi Boga i nas.
Sometimes God does not give us what we ask him for because he knows it won't be a blessing.
Ponekad Bog nam ne daje to što mu tražimo zato što zna da to neće biti blagoslov za nas.
But if we're having financial troubles, if we're going through a period of crisis, we can rest assured that God is more interested in providing for us than we are.
Ali ako prolazimo kroz neke financijske nevolje ili kroz neku krizu, možemo biti sigurni da Bog želi da nam pruži, obezbedi mnogo više nego što čak i mi sami možemo sebi da pružimo.
And we don't have to rush in. We don't have to want to get things quickly.
I ne moramo da žurimo, ne moramo odmah da postignemo sve.
Look at this clip because it
Pogledajte
has
ovdje.
relevance to the practical topics we'll discuss later.
Zato što ima veze sa praktičnim temama o kojima ćemo
An
govoriti
experiment was done years ago in one of the top universities in America.
Obavili su jedan eksperiment pre više godina na jednom od najboljih univerziteta u Americi.
I'm going to tell you before we watch the clip because the speaker is from Latin America, so.
Reći ću vam o čemu se radi pre nego što pogledamo klip, zato što govornik iz Latinske
But
Amerike.
they took children from age, I think, 6 to 8, somewhere in this, range.
Ali oni su uzeli decu godina od 6 do 8
And told them, here is a marshmallow,
i rekli su evo marshmallow.
a candy,
Ono
something
belo
sweet.
iz marshmallow, bez čokolade.
Here is a marshmallow. If you manage to not eat it in 15 minutes,
Ako uspeš da ne pojedeš za 15 minuta,
you will get a second one.
dobit ćeš još jedan.
If you eat it, you won't get a second.
Ako ga pojedeš, to je to, nećeš dobiti više.
So they did an experiment and they found out that about 2/3 of the children ate it.
I uradili su eksperimenti i shvatili su da oko 2/3 dece je pojelo odmah.
But the researcher actually studied these kids for a long period of time, I think about 15 years.
Ali ti istraživači su nastavili da istražuju život te dece,
And
nekih 15 godina.
They generally found out that the children that didn't eat it
I onda su došli do zaključka da ona deca koja nisu odmah pojela
tended to be much more successful in life.
su kasnije u životu bila mnogo uspešniji.
Why? Because they've developed the characteristic of self-discipline.
Zašto? Zato što su odmah razvijali tu karakteristiku samodiscipline.
I want you to view the clip. They actually filmed some of these kids.
Želim da pogledate ovaj klip zato što su snimili neko od ove dece.
I'm here because I have a very important message. I think we have found the most important factor for
Do you have it in Serbian?
With
And it was
subtitles
found
probably.
close to
Yeah,
here,
you probably
Stanford.
do. I'm sorry,
Psychology
I didn't
professor
think of taking it.
took kids that were 4 years old and put them in a room all by themselves. And he would tell the child, a 4-year-old kid, Johnny,
Just summarize
I'm going to leave you here with a marshmallow
On govori
for
da je
15 minutes.
dete od
If after
4
I come
godine
back,
ostavio
this
stalno
marshmallow is
u
here,
sobi sa ovim
you will get another one. So you will
na
have two.
15 minuta. Da.
To tell a 4-year-old kid to wait 15 minutes for something that they like is equivalent to tell us, we'll bring you coffee in 2 hours.
Reći
Exactly.
malom detetu da treba da čeka 15
So,
minuta na nešto što
what
treba da
happened
pojede, isto
when
kao
the
nama, kad bi
professor
rekli,
left
doneću
the
vam
room?
kafu za 2 sata.
As soon as the door closed, 2 out of 3 ate the marshmallow.
Dvoje
5
od troje
seconds, 10
odmah je
seconds,
pojelo.
40 seconds, 50 seconds, 2 minutes, 4 minutes, 8 minutes. Some lasted 14 and a half minutes.
Neki su čak 14,5 minuta izdržali.
Could not wait. What's interesting is that 1 out of 3 would look at the marshmallow and go like this.
Jedno od troje bi ovako
Look
gledalo
at
u
it.
marshmallow,
Put it back.
vratio nazad.
They would walk around. They would play with their skirts and pants.
Šetkali
That
bi
child
okolo.
already at 4 understood the most important principle for success, which is the ability to delay gratification. Self-discipline, the most important factor for success. 15 years later, 14, 15 years later, follow-up study. What did they find? They went to look for these kids who were now 18 and 19, and they found that 100% of the children that had not eaten the marshmallow were successful. They had good grades, they were doing wonderful, they were happy, they had their plans, they had good relationship with the
Govori o
teachers,
tome da
students,
posle
they were doing
15
one fine.
godina su našli to
A
decu
great
i
percentage of
videli
the
su da
kids
su
that ate the
uspešniji,
marshmallow, they were
bolje
in trouble. They
ocene.
did not make it to the university, they had bad grades, some of them dropped out, a few
A oni
were
koji su
still
odmah
there with bad
pojeli
grades,
su
a
imali
few
ili
had
loše
good
ocene ili
grades.
su odustali.
I had a question. Kids react the same way as the American kids. So I went to Colombia and I reproduced the experiment, and it was very funny. I used 4, 5, and 6 years old kids. And let me show you what happened.
On je otišao u Kolumbiju
Hasta para un
sada da
niño
vidi
de
da li će
4
deca
años
isto
es
reagovati kao u
atractiva la
Americi.
idea de tener el 100%
Y
de
ahí
retorno
está.
a la inversión en 15 minutos. Sin embargo, algunos de ellos, tan pronto la puerta se cerró, Se comieron el marshmallow inmediatamente. Otros, en cambio, resistieron el impulso.
I wonder what became of her later in life.
So, what happened in Colombia? Hispanic kids, 2 out of 3 ate the marshmallow, 1 out of 3 did not.
So the
This
same
little girl was
results in
interesting.
Colombia.
She
U
ate
Kolumbiji
the
2 out of 3.
inside of the
2
marshmallow.
od 3.
In other words, she wanted us to think that she had not eaten it, so she would get 2, but she ate it. So we know she'll be successful, but we have to watch her. Okay?
This little girl ate
She
it
should
from
not
the
go into
inside.
banking, for example,
inside.
or work in a
Yeah,
cash register.
Took a little
but
bit
she will
so
be
that it
successful.
looks, it's
And
not
Jedna
eaten, but it's
devojčica je
actually.
pojela samo
Even
iznutra,
sales-
ostavila je
a salesperson
kockica, digla ovako, iznutra je iščopkala i kaže, znamo da će biti uspešna, ali moramo da je
Okay,
pazimo.
here you are, the person ate the marshmallow.
You know, interestingly, what it says in the Acts of the Apostle that Paul was meeting with King Agrippus.
Interesantno da ono što kaže u delima apostolskim, da se Pavle sastao, odnosno došao je pred kralja Agripu.
He talks to him about the judgment, about righteousness, judgment, and self-control.
On mu je govorio o pravednosti, sudu i samokontroli.
So we will see in the next session when we deal with debt and with financial issues, a lot of the problems come from our inability to delay gratification.
Tako da na sljedećem predavanju, kada budemo govorili o dugovanjima, govorit ćemo o toj našoj nesposobnosti da odgodimo ugađanje svojim prohtjevima.
Inability to wait.
Da nismo sposobni da čekamo.
But if we are confident that God will provide,
Ali ako smo mi sigurni u to da će Bog da se postara,
then we should wait. If we really need something, God will give it to us.
onda treba da čekamo. Ako zaista nam to treba, Bog će nam to i dati.
So these are the three basic truths that I think act as the pillars of a Christian understanding of stewardship and money.
Ovo su dakle 3 osnovne istine, odnosno 3 stuba koja govore o nama hrišćanima kao upraviteljima.
And we'll skip this exercise.
Preskočit ćemo ovu vežbu.
One exercise that you can do, we're not going to do it here, but you know, if you want.
Jedna od vežbi koje možete vi da uradite, koje nećemo stići ovdje da uradimo, ali ako želite možete.
This is part of our small group study.
Ovo je deo naše male grupe za proučavanje.
We encourage people to actually sign a deed of ownership.
Mi ohrabrujemo ljude da potpišu ovu deed of ownership. Kao
It's like a document certifying who owns your possessions.
tapija je reč koju tražim. Tapija znači imovine, znači dokument koji govori šta posjeduješ.
So on the following date of, and this is the date here, you write your name here and you say, I'm transferring my possessions from me to God.
Znači ovdje gore se napiše od tog i tog dana, ja sa svog imena prebacujem prebacujem Bogu svu svoju
On
imovinu.
this day, we acknowledge God's ownership and my stewardship responsibility of the following.
Od ovog dana priznajem Božje upraviteljstvo, odnosno da Bog sve posjeduje i da sam ja upravitelj.
And you
onoga što
write
radim.
down everything. Here where it says items, everything significant that you have.
I onda ispod navedete sve značajno što posjedujete.
And you know, I would encourage you to include not only possessions, but you know, my body, my time, my talents,
I ja bih vas ohrabrio da
Sorry.
tu
husband.
navedete ne samo svoju imovinu, već svoje telo, vreme, zdravlje.
The good thing about the husband is if you give it to God, he's no longer your problem. You know, God
Dobra
is
stvar.
yours. Deal with him.
Ako predamo svog muža Bogu, onda više nije naš problem. Bože, on je tvoj,
I
ti
give
radi. Radi na njemu, ja dižem ruke.
And then you write your name here, and you can have witnesses.
I možete imati čak i svedoke potpisanog dokumenta.
This is very American. Americans like to write, have everything very obvious.
Ovo je vrlo amerikanizovano, zato što oni vole te stvari, vole da potpisuju, da imaju.
But I've had a lot of people tell me that it's actually helpful to them. They put it somewhere on a wall.
Ali sam sreo mnogo ljudi koji je reklo da im je ovo stvarno bilo od koristi. Stavili su to negde na zid.
Some put it above their bed.
Neki su stavili čak iznad
So
kreveta.
that they can see it and be reminded.
Da mogu to stalno da vide i da ih stalno podsjeća.
Because we constantly seem to forget
Zato što mi smo skloni čestom
that
zaboravljanju.
everything is God's.
Da sve pripada Bogu.